But now let's talk with Edward Beck. I love that story from the book of Numbers about Eldad and Medad, prophesying. And I remember that Moses, as a spiritual leader, came by that lesson the hard way. I mean, leading up to that story, he has reached the end of his rope. He's complaining to God about the burden he has with all the people. And it's God who says, go out there and get your 70 elders together. You don't have to do it all by yourself. I mean, what is it about religious leaders that they can go astray like that and think that it's all about me, it's all about what I do?
I guess it's called humanity. You would think we'd be exempt, but we're not, and we fall into the same pitfalls as everybody else. As I was trying to say in that reflection, I just think sometimes we get threatened if we see somebody doing it better than we do it. And it's a natural instinct, but as I said, I think you have to work against it because it really has nothing to do with you. It has to do with where the message gets spread, how it gets spread, and who does it best.
What it called out for me, Ed, was this idea of God as a force of abundance and for us to operate from that place.
Yes.
Why do we struggle with that? And I wonder if this is something that you work with in some of your retreats, where people just aren't able to embrace the abundance of God and fight with what they don't have or which they wish they had in another sense.
I think there may be a basic insecurity in us, and maybe it comes from when we're very young and we don't get the attention that maybe we think we deserve, or we get knocked around a little, or people in some way don't say nice things about us. And so when we do get the attention, it's so nourishing for us that we want to bask in it. We want to keep it. And when we feel it slipping away, we think, oh, there it goes. And I just think it's a woundedness. It's an insecurity. And I think it's probably common to all of us. But again, if we can work against it, I think what we wind up seeing is that we don't need to be threatened at all.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't help but think about sibling rivalry and wondering, is that where it all begins? I mean, did you have siblings growing up? Did you struggle with these issues?
I have one brother. He's 2.5 years younger. And we did have a bit of a struggle. He followed me in school, and I did well academically, and he didn't do as well. So he would get some of my teachers who would say, well, you're not the student Edward was. You don't do it like Edward did it. But he was a better athlete. So, we would play intramural sports. I mean, it was kind of embarrassing. My younger brother, hit better than I did. He shot better than I did. And so we would compete that way. So I think what we wound up doing was excelling at what we did best, and we kind of rubbed each other's noses in it. So I would get good grades and say, you want to see the report card?
Yeah.
And he would say, yeah, but you really loused up that basketball game.
Yeah.
So it kind of went back and forth. And it was sibling rivalry, but it was also you stake what you're good at, and you plant your feet in, and you try to make your name, I suppose, in that. And it has advantages. That's not always bad, but it can have some disadvantages as well.
But boy, those teachers don't do you any favors when they start comparing kids and saying, oh, your brother learned this before you do. I mean,
no, but we live in a world of competition, don't we?
Well, I want to ask you about that, because you're wonderful in your writing and your messages about talking about people in ministry and the challenges that you face. What about competition within ministry? Many people are drawn to it for the good work that they want to do, but competition can come up in that. How do we address that for people that have the right intention but are working with this competitive nature in themselves,
Well, I must admit, when I got that response from that bishop, who again remains unnamed, I was a bit nonplussed by it. I thought, well, why wouldn't, if this is a different time this Mass is going to air, and it's not the same as your Mass, it gives a different perspective, why wouldn't you embrace it? Why respond from a place of threat? And yet I realize there have been times in my ministry where, I give retreats all over the country, and someone will say, there's another retreat 2 parishes over going on, and we went to hear him, and he's really, really good. And I'll think, how many people is he getting? And they'll say, well, it's a pretty full church. And I start to think, I wonder what he's saying that I'm not saying. Why is he getting more people? And it's just, again, even though we're about good news and the message is important and it's liberating, I think we have to work against those instincts that somehow are going to do us in.
This comes up a lot of times in my work as a local pastor, that often it's difficult for pastors in the same town to have intimate, real friendships, because there is this sort of sense of competition. Even when we don't foster it, often our members are saying, I know somebody who's not really that happy at the Lutheran church, and I'm encouraging them to come to our church. And I always feel like saying, no, we don't want those people. We want the people who don't have a faith community. But that's just so much present in the world.
And it's not only the ministers, isn't it the congregants as well? They get on the parish council and they're the elite, and they're better than the other parishioners then, or different ministries. Lectors who wants to be the best lector, and it's funny. We just have this need to be number one. Maybe it's very American. I don't know.
Well, Ed, we want to hear more about your other ministry work and the television work that you're doing. Talk to us a little bit about the ABC program and your work with Chris Cuomo and so forth.
And we promise not to be jealous.
Okay, good. Exactly. Well, Chris Cuomo is a co-host of Good Morning America on ABC, and he's also a friend of mine. And we used to work out in the gym, and we would have conversation when we were working out, and we would fight about religious issues. And we'd really fight about them because usually we're on opposite poles for some reason. And so I was doing a show for ABC at the time, hosting another show, and he said, why don't you forget that show? And why don't we do this show? He said, you're a boring guest anyway, and I'd be much more interesting. So Chris and I started, the producers loved it, the idea, the concept of it. And basically, religion news of the week, we kind of just raise some issues, and then we debate them. We talk about them. And we pick 2 issues a week, and we kind of fight on air, And it's not quite Fox News fighting, but it is kind of back and forth about, even if he agrees with my perspective, he'll take the other perspective just so that we have something to talk about. And so it's good.
Your ministry has unfolded in ways probably that you never have expected, that you do so much with media and that sort of thing. Are there ways in which your colleagues in the ministry, other priests, might feel competition with you or struggle with you that your work is so different?
Sometimes I get some of that. I have one priest who calls me the movie star. So I think that, and he does it half kiddingly, but I also know that there can be resentment when you're placed in the literal spotlight. And people wonder why you, or why do you get to do this, I suppose, as if it's some glorified position. It's certainly, as you know, it's not always glorified. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of preparation. And yet, I think there is the kind of elitism of it that disturbs people, and they think, well, why did he get to do that? So I do encounter that sometimes.
But it's part of your inspiration in your own spiritual life to express yourself through these different venues, so to speak, right? In your writing, I know, certainly, and the opportunity that the television programs give you to talk about issues you're very passionate about that you think should have a faith perspective to them.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I mean, the media is so used to defining us, religious people or clergy people, and now I get the chance to say, well, this is who we really are, and this is what we really believe and stand for, and I get to do it unedited. And I really like that because I think religious people and religious institutions are so misportrayed in the media, and I think my opportunity here is to put another face on it, and I really appreciate that.
Well, that's what we try to do here as well, so we're delighted that you're here. Thank you.